2 episodes in, just about to record a third, and there's still a question we haven't answered.
Really? What's that?
Who on earth are we? And why are we doing this?
That's technically 2 questions.
You know, math was never my thing. But how did we get to this? 2 people, different generations, different genders, different nationalities, different cultures.
And that's it. We are just like everybody or anybody.
Yeah, we are you. You are about to be a part of Life Happens,
The lifestyle podcast with an unusual combination of new perspective and seasoned experience.
with Michelle R. Williams.
And Nick Hirst.
Come and join our conversation on all aspects of life,
Because life happens.
but you can too.
We are you. That sounds very philosophical. What do you mean by it?
Just that we're 2 people with very different life experiences trying to make sense of all that happens in our lives and how to survive it. And that maybe we should explain how we came together to do this and to make a podcast.
I just think it's so funny that despite all of that, different backgrounds, different ages, different life paths, we literally ended up at the same point, starting the same project and doing this podcast.
Okay, we'll talk about how we came to decide to do a podcast a bit later, but why are you doing it?
That's a very good question. And it's probably something we should explain because this project is not just us being bored and starting something, but for me, it has a very, very important background. And if I had to say it, long story short, I would probably say that I'm doing this podcast because I wanted to help people who think just like me, but they do not have this support around them. Because growing up, and even now, everyone around me goes through life in the same pattern. You know, you go to school, then you find a job, you work that job for 40 years of your life, and then you retire. And you make some kids on the way. And that's pretty much it. But even since I was little, it just never really sat with me. And it was never really something I wanted. But I just accepted it in a way, that's how life goes. But then I met you, and as we continued talking, you were sort of telling me all these stories of your life and how your life went. And I remember it really made me think differently about life and about all these plans because you definitely didn't go through life in that pattern. And we will get to that. But I remember being just so fascinated by it and being like, okay, maybe my life doesn't have to look like my parents' lives, and maybe I can make it a bit more interesting. And from that point, I sort of became or started becoming who am I today. And I started looking at my life from a different point of view. And I'm so grateful for that because I'm really sort of seeing my future in a better way now. But then I remember when I was talking with my friends and other people, and I was basically telling them what you told me. And I was telling them the point of view that you sort of gave me. And they were like, yeah, but I don't know how to do that. And like, it's so scary. And does it even work? And so on and so on. And I realized that so many people want to have different lives. But first of all, they don't know how to do it because no one ever told them. And second of all, then they usually don't have this support system around them, which I never had until I met you. And so I think that the reason why I'm doing this podcast is to influence and change people's thinking in the same way you changed my thinking over the years.
Good, interesting. Actually, you told me some things there that I didn't really know. Obviously, we need to go back and have a look at how we came together and became each other's influencers, if you like. But before we do, just for fun, I should say that when we first started talking about the podcast, it was in June of 2025. One of the first things we were doing was talking about what's it going to be about, and the second thing is what should we call it. I just wanted to read out some of our names. You may have even forgotten some of them that we came
Oh
up
my
with
gosh.
as we were considering what. Here's the first one: all of it. Do you remember that one? I really don't, actually. Did you come
No,
up with
no,
it?
you came up with these because I remember I'm terrible with names. And so I remember just me being like, okay, you do it. That's your part to do because I'm not doing that because I'm terrible in it.
Okay, so we had all of it. Then we had, and this is very me, living in the present tense.
Oh
Maybe it was the
gosh.
fact that I'd had done recently some English teaching, more of which later.
Yeah, I remember hating that one.
Okay. Then we had one that is definitely, I wrote this, but with very, very much with you in mind. No filter.
Okay, I'm trying my best here, okay? I'm on my best behavior. I'm not even swearing, okay? Give me a break.
Okay. And then we had, this is another one of mine. That's my self deprecating sense of humor, I like to think. Michelle and the old guy, but we decided against that in the end.
I think you decided against that because you basically insulted your own self there.
It's not an insult to be old. In fact, it's
That's it.
something of
Okay.
a compliment because you've achieved something, uh,
Okay.
like basically not dying when you're young. Then two more, and this one I remember I came up with because it was a direct quote from something you said. I don't know what the point was.
I'm still a huge fan of that one. If it wasn't that long for a podcast name, I would definitely go with that one because that's so us. And, we are trying not to do it while we are recording, but when we just talk, it usually ends up with one of us just talking for like 10 minutes straight and then stopping in the middle of a sentence, being like, why did I start that? What the point was? And the other one is usually like, I have no idea. Let's move on.
We'll
Which
come
I
back
love,
to
and
that.
it's so us.
Hold that thought. We'll come back to that. And one last one, which I still like, but we were discussing it yesterday actually, and maybe we'll keep it in mind for a future podcast. What if we're right?
If, because we are always right. No, we are usually not, but I
No,
mean,
but we
I also like that one. And also this one was mine, just FYI. But but since and I told you yesterday that it kind of sounds like a conspiracy theories podcast, which is something I can imagine you would do, and I would be a huge fan of that. But it's giving that vibe, so it's not really fitting for what we are doing here.
no, exactly. But it'd be a great title for a conspiracy theory series, as you said. And I quite like the odd conspiracy theory myself. Anyway,
Yeah, I
let's
know.
go back, reel back a bit. You mentioned how we would have these long conversations, and one of us would witter on for like 10 minutes, and then we'd completely have lost the original point because we'd be moving, getting sidetracked and sidetracked and sidetracked over and over again. So I should explain, we've been friends for about 4 years now. And over the last, well, since when was it? March, you moved to America to work in Chicago. And somehow during that time, despite the time difference, we were having these conversations more and more every week, and they would go on later and later. And because of the time difference, and we'll talk about location in a second, I will be talking to you at what was midnight my time. And for you, it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And quite often we could talk for 4 hours straight. So somehow our friendship, when you were further away, got stronger. It's kind of weird. So we became much, much sort of closer, even though we were actually 7,000 kilometers apart.
I kind of just love thinking about it that way because, like, it only shows that relationships and friendships are not about the distance. And no matter how far away you are from people, it changes nothing if you actually care about that person, which I kind of love because, moving away from my family like that, it was very challenging. And I think it perfectly, these 6 months that I was away, it perfectly showed who really cares and who feels like the distance is a problem. And it was quite telling for me.
And this is probably the time to reveal locations because we're still not in the same location. We are actually now on the same continent, but you are in Czechia and I am in Brussels in Belgium. Although
Yeah, which
I
I kind of
still,
want to make a point here that you made it sound like I was the one who moved away. but you moved to Belgium already like a year and a half ago, leaving me in Czech Republic. So I just want to make this clear that you were the one who left.
Okay, so I left first. So I had been living in Czech Republic for oh, uh, 15 years nearly in Prague, and then later in a small village some 30 kilometers north of Prague. And it was while I was living there that we met. So basically, I was living in Czechia and doing different things. I'll go through some of the things I've done in my life a bit later. But by that time, I was doing some part-time teaching, and I was teaching in a local school close to the village that I was living in. And one of my students was Michelle R. Williams. You remember it well, I'm sure.
I remember it well. And I think that's the perfect moment for me to reveal how much I didn't like you. To this day, it's been years, and to this day, I just find it so hilarious that I actually didn't like you at all. I mean, there were people that I hated, so, it's not that bad. But just remembering it, oh my gosh, I was suddenly always sick the day we had your class.
I don't really remember. You remember at that time I was teaching just in your school, and then later, whilst I was still teaching in your school and your class, I started teaching in another school as well. And so I was basically teaching 4 days a week in two different places. I had 250 students a week, and I was teaching English as a foreign language, English conversation, anglický konverzace, something like that in Czech, is it?
Oh, sorry, no, I'm not here to make fun of your language skills. I'm sorry.
I suppose you came into my consciousness more in the final year when we did drama. I used to use doing drama as a way of teaching English and having fun with the language. And we did a version that I'd written of Alice in Wonderland. And much to my surprise, you volunteered very vociferously to play the Queen of Hearts and suddenly turned into this megalomaniac, vicious psycho killer of the Queen of Hearts, stomping around the stage, shouting, "Off with his head!" And I thought, wow, I'm
I
seeing a
love
different
that.
side to this particular student.
Because I remember, I don't know if you know that, but I remember that moment very clearly because I was so fed up with you because we've been doing all these drama plays and things like that for years. And every single time, because my English, it needs to be said, wasn't the best. In fact, it was quite terrible and I hated it. But the point was that because of that, you always gave me some boring role. And I was so fed up with that. And I remember when you were casting the Alice in Wonderland thing, you gave me some boring role again. And I was so fed up. And I remember I was sitting next to my best friend Caroline, who I've already mentioned. And I was like, "Is he kidding me? I'm not doing that again." And she was like, "Well, then tell him." I was like, "No." But then I was too fed up and I was like, "Excuse me, I'm not doing that. I want to be the Queen of Hearts." And I want some credit for that because that was very brave of me.
I remember it well because for anyone who actually knows the story of Alice in Wonderland, I had actually cast Michelle as, in my mind, as the Dormouse at the Mad Hatter's Tea Party,
Yes. Yes. I hated that. I hated that.
which probably speaks volumes about how when I was casting it, how I saw each of the kids in my class, who by this
A
time I had got
dormouse.
to know. So I'd got to know them
Okay.
all. Just wait your turn. Because 250 kids a week, it takes a while to learn names, especially as their names in a different language, then actually put faces to those names. But obviously by this time I'd been teaching you for 3 years, so I knew who everybody was, and I thought I sort of knew how to cast them, which parts would be best. So when you suddenly came back at me and said, "No, I really want to be the Queen of Hearts," and I remember being quite surprised, and then thinking to myself, "Well, is that going to work?" Then I thought, well, she seems so determined that I'm going to say yes, because it's like almost cast against type. Because I mean, let's be honest. In my classes, I don't know obviously what you were like in other classes, but in my classes, you were pretty quiet. So that's kind of how I saw you. That's why the dormouse thing. And then suddenly you wanted to play this psychopathic royal who's intent on chopping the heads off most of her subjects.
I think it describes me perfectly. In my past life, I'm sure that I was a psychopathic royal. Feels right.
Now that I know you, it was completely right. And actually, you delivered an Oscar winning performance. I think you almost pretty much stole the show at that because it
Yeah,
was
that's my
actually,
style.
it was so casting against type. And also, I hope you won't mind me saying this, but you were one of the smaller people physically in your class at that time. No longer, it's true, you've grown to be quite tall, but then you weren't. And so it made the whole spectacle even more effective. So anyway, that's some of our background. And then it should be said that you left school, and that was that. I didn't see or hear of you for 2 years.
I honestly, I really hope that I will never see you again.
Yet you
That
say that,
aged
and yet
well.
you were the one who reached out to me, not the other way round.
That's right. And I honestly can't really remember how I came to that decision, but I remember it was when I was already at high school and it was during COVID, I believe. And for some reason, and I genuinely don't remember why, I came to a decision that I want to learn English and I want to speak English, which is quite ridiculous because genuinely at elementary school, I hated English. I was one of these people who are like, yeah, I don't need another language. Like I'm in Czech Republic, like I don't need another language, which to be honest, now I'm so embarrassed to admit this because it was so stupid of me. But then as I got older, I sort of come on, I saw that. And then I came to this decision that I should probably learn how to speak English because the point is, and it's also a Czech education, that we really learn the grammar and the sort of like technical side of another language, but we don't learn how to speak and how to be confident. So like my English on paper was really good. I mean, I was straight A student my whole life, so obviously it was, but I was so shy and so scared to speak, which again, I think it aged quite well. Me sitting here having a podcast in a language that's not mine. Love it. But I came to that decision and I somehow just remembered your existence. And I was like, well, who will teach me how to speak other than a native speaker? And because, and funnily enough, because I was too shy to reach out to you, I reached out to your wife, who was also my teacher, and I asked her to ask you to reach out to me. And it's just so, so embarrassing. But at the same time, at that time, it was really brave of me, I have to admit.
And here we are now. So what happened then after that? And that's, as I say, it was 4 years ago. So we then met once a week for 45 minutes in a, what you call in Czechia, a sukrana. Did I say that all right? We don't really have such things in England. The closest would be like a tea room or possibly a coffee house, but a sukrana is just a little bit different, a little bit more than that. But anyway, we would meet in this place. And during that time, we slowly transitioned from being, teacher and student into friends and just discussing anything and everything. And then I had to move away and left suddenly, but really it was quite sudden, left Czechia and moved to Brussels, where I am speaking from now. So suddenly we kind of lost contact, but then we reconnected online and then started just chatting on a regular basis, at least weekly. And then the America thing came up for you. So we spoke more of that, and I've been to America quite a lot of times. And so I was able to try and help talk you through the nervousness that you may have felt. And then once you're in Chicago, we started speaking, 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes more. And just because we found it very easy to talk and we kind of shared our views on so many things, or our views on so many things are similar or the same. And we kind of almost second guess each other about stuff. And we just found that there was no generational gender gap between us. So
Which is still surprising.
yeah, it just sort of crept up on us, I suppose, a bit.
Yeah.
And then you said one day, as a joke in one of our chats, we should do a podcast about this. And we had a jolly good laugh, and it would toss us to bed at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And the next morning, I woke up and thought, did Michelle say something about we should do a podcast about that? And I was thinking, she was probably serious. She's planting the idea. So I thought about it. And then, so the next time we spoke, I said, well, you know that podcast idea? And here we are today.
And here we are. But it's so funny because the joke was already well in life months, maybe even years prior me telling you. Because every time I was, talking with my friends and sort of sharing with them different views that sort of you had that changed the way I was thinking, which is, coming back to what I said at the beginning of this. And as I was sort of retelling these, I was always like, that would be such a great podcast. Like, we really should have a podcast. And this joke was going on for so long. I think it was even before you left Czechia that I was joking about it with my friends. But I never wanted to tell you. I never really meant it seriously because I wasn't sure that it would be something you would want to do. And I genuinely believe that when I told you I wasn't fully sober, because I genuinely never wanted to tell you. But now I'm glad I did, and here we are.
Here we are indeed. So we decided that what we were going to do is just try to recapture these long chats that we have and basically edit them down a bit so that we don't speak for 4 hours about nothing in particular. And that we would have a general focus on lifestyle issues. So, Michelle, you were explaining a bit before, in order to be able to talk about lifestyle stuff, we have to, have had a bit of a lifestyle ourselves. So you have great interest in things like dancing and art.
I'm such an artistic person. Like, apart from music, I've done every single area of art that I could. So I started doing ballet and contemporary dance when I was 4 years old. So it was literally my upbringing and my whole life. And I'm not doing it anymore, and I really miss it. But it gave me, it wasn't just a hobby for me, but it sort of gave me a lot of practical skills and a lot of views on different things because, as people can imagine, ballet is not an easy thing to do. And the whole thing can be very toxic. And it's definitely a topic that I want to get into in the future episodes because basically I've done ballet and I've done modeling also sort of my whole life because my grandfather is a photographer. So I've been in front of camera literally since the day I was born. And both of these things sort of require you to look in some way and to act in some way. And, like I was always naturally skinny, sometimes too much. So people think that it was so easy for me. Like, oh yeah, you're skinny and pretty. Of course, it's easy for you. But funnily enough, I'm someone who struggled and still struggles with confidence and a lot of insecurities. And that's definitely a topic that I want to get into eventually. But yeah, otherwise I studied art and so I'm a very artistic person. So all these things sort of gave me different viewpoints. And also, as I already mentioned, since I met you and sort of gained this new viewpoint of life, I also had quite different experience because I didn't go through the typical life path. And so I have quite a lot of like work experience, which also wasn't really good. And working a typical office job from 9 to 5 just showed me how much I hated it and how much I don't want to do it. And also, obviously, being brave enough to move to America also changed a lot of things and the way I see my life going on. And so now, and I actually kind of like the fact that my life will be developing sort of live as we are doing this podcast because now I'm in Czech Republic, but I won't stay here for too long. So we will be sort of able to track that into this podcast. But now I'm planning to move abroad again to study psychology, which I think it's very obvious that psychology is something I'm interested in. And I think it will show a lot in this podcast too.
So that's you. I should give a bit brief background because we talked about how perhaps I have influenced you or changed the way you think, which I think is the definition of influencing. Um, just because of my background. So let me just clear that up. And by the way, I would just preface this, Michelle chose to be influenced by me. Don't try this at home, kids. It's not necessarily a template
No, of
for a perfect
course.
life.
I don't think that it's that you changed who I am, but I think you unlocked it something I already was. I just didn't know how to reach it within me. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was the point.
And actually, that's kind of the point of this podcast. We
Yes.
join in the conversation, and perhaps we can help unlock something in you. So this is me. I'm from England. I grew up in a suburb of southwest London. I went to school in Wimbledon, where they play the tennis. And then from there, I went on to university, went straight from school to university and studied drama and English together. It was a kind of hybrid course. They don't actually do it anymore, which kind of left you qualified to be either an actor or a teacher of drama. At that time, I chose acting, although it didn't happen overnight. I spent 3 years working, first of all, as a van driver and lorry driver, and then bartender. And then eventually, as I mentioned in the last episode, I became an assistant manager at a sports club, realized that that was not for me. And that's when I went into acting and got a job with a children's theatre company, touring all over England. And then I got a job with another theatre company in Wales, Cardiff in Wales, and toured all over Wales. And from there, I went straight into, we have these Christmas shows in England called pantomimes. And I went into pantomime also in South Wales, in Swansea. So I actually worked for like 20 months straight. And everybody had told me, oh, it's so difficult acting, getting jobs and stuff. And at first I thought, this is easy. Then reality struck. And then after that, I had like 2 or 3 months out of work. And then after that, it was a mixture of very, very small parts on TV and doing some various theatre tours that took in England and Scotland as well. So I really know my own country well because I've toured all over it. And I've become very interested in broadcasting. So I took myself off to this postgraduate course on a place that no longer exists, called the National Broadcasting School in London. Did this very intensive course on how to be a producer and presenter, and then started working for the BBC as a freelance correspondent in radio. But whilst doing that, it was very, very badly paid, it should be said. I ended up getting a job as the first ever professional broadcaster in Saudi Arabia for their TV, their English language TV station and their English language radio station. So that was a really pivotal experience in my life. In some ways, the work was fantastic. It would have taken, a decade to get to where I was in Saudi, because within 3 weeks in Saudi Arabia, with me being on television pretty much every day, I found out what it's like actually to be a recognizable star. And actually, it's not that great because it's quite intrusive. Anyway, but living in Saudi Arabia presents its challenges on another level, in the cultural level. I came back to England and then worked in various media outlets. Well, worked in one, making videos and audio programs for long haul airlines. And that led me to working for the BBC. And I worked for the BBC. I worked for BBC World Service, broadcasting to the world, and then also for the BBC's actually the UK's most listened to radio station, the music station called Radio 2. So most of my life it's been working in the music broadcasting. Subsequent to the BBC, I ran a broadcast service for the British government's Foreign Office, providing programs for radio stations and TV outlets all over the world in 7 languages. And then I moved into PR, and this is where I started moving a bit more around the world. And I left the UK and went to work on the Channel Island of Jersey, just off the coast of France. And then from there, I moved to Czechia By that time, me and my wife had an apartment in the center of Prague and lived there. And I started doing, again, I did some PR work. I did some proofreading, copy editing for English language websites out there. And then I started teaching in a school in Prague for a year and then moved to start teaching at a school outside of Prague where a certain Michelle R. Williams was a student. And then I also taught at another school in another suburb of Prague, where actually taught at this other school slightly more. I was doing 3 days there and 1 day in your school. Even after you'd left, I still stayed on that school. So I was doing that for a few years, which kind of brought the circle to completion because I'd studied drama and education, and then I'd started off going into drama and acting, and I ended up with teaching, and surprisingly, uh, ended up really liking it, despite some of the students hating me. And then suddenly I now found myself in Brussels and writing and podcasting. And here we are. So that's my life. A bit of a nomad, lived in 6 different countries. I worked out I've had 12 different houses or places to live through the course of my life. A lot of moving. And that's another one, kids. Don't try this at home. Home being the pun there, because moving is such a pain. But on the other hand, it's nice to experience different countries and different cultures. So that's me. So it's been a slightly strange journey, and I've sort of made it up as I went along. I kind of had a life plan, but I've always been very adaptable. And that's kind of how we've ended up just being able to chat about anything and everything, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love that, and that's exactly the style of life that I want to have. Not to settle for one thing for the rest of it, but sort of taking these opportunities. Like, do you want to move to another country? Yeah, sure, why not? Do you hate your job and want to start another one? Yeah, sure, why not? It's exactly that approach to life that I wasn't used to. Because like most people, just have like, I don't know, maybe 1, 2, 3 jobs in a very similar field, probably in the same city. Maybe like one starting flat and then like a family house, and that's pretty much it. And that's so boring. And I'm not like that. And I'm exactly the type of person you are. And hearing all of these stories of yours, I'm just like, it makes me so excited for my life because I'm like,
Good.
I can't like, I'm 21 and I already went through like a couple of interesting things and I've already done quite a lot of things for my age. But at the same time, like, I'm so excited about it. Like, I have no idea in what country I will end up living. I really hope it won't be Czech Republic, to be honest. But I don't know what kind of jobs I will have, what kind of opportunities I will have, and it's really exciting. And I also wanted to say that it's so not surprising that someone like you ended up having a podcast. It's as you were talking, I was like, of course, it's so obvious. And I'm almost disappointed that it took you that long to start doing that. And it took me to force you into doing that. Me, someone who never done anything like this, who's doing it in her second language and who's always been shy and awkward. And here I am doing it. And I came up with that. And you, with your history, you never thought of that on your own.
Sometimes it takes 2. It's just whatever it is that you and I have sort of developed over the last 4 years, and particularly the last year, it has just spurred us to do stuff, basically. And sometimes that's kind of how it works. And that's kind of why we wanted to do this in the first place, because hopefully our stories can help other people who may be struggling with what happens to them in their lives, and the fact that no obstacle should be so big that you can't somehow get past it, especially in your daily working and personal lives. There's always something that you can do, or at least maybe it's just my optimism, but I've always felt
Maybe.
that you shouldn't do stuff that is wasting your time or that you don't like. My motto throughout life has always been, you should always have fun doing what you're doing. And if you're not, either you're doing it wrong or do something different. And I've lived by that. So I have walked away from things where I thought, I really don't like this. This is rubbish. I
Okay.
don't want to do this. I actually left one job. This was before I'd started acting or anything. After half a day, I did this job working for a major aircraft manufacturer. I can't think of their names now. Their name, but anyway, they had their huge factory very close to where I lived, and I worked in their office. And basically, I had to. They just had these great sheets of paper with aircraft parts, and then the cost of the aircraft part. And I just had to, and they'd already been already added up and everything with the totals at the bottom of the page. This is page, not on a computer, on paper. And I just had to check them. So I was doing this for about 3 hours, 4 hours, the whole morning. Then it was lunchtime, and one of my new colleagues took me with him to lunch, and we had to walk through the factory. And I remember we walked through this hangar, and there were two Concorde aircraft there. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. Had lunch, and then I went back, and I went out to the car park, and I sat in my car, and I thought, actually, just sitting there checking lists of aircraft parts to see that they've got the right total of how much they cost is not me. And so I just drove home.
Also, I mean, with your math skills, it wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
You wouldn't, if you didn't
Absolutely.
quit, you'll get fired very quickly because of your math skills.
Either that or there would have been planes dropping out of the sky all over the place because they had the wrong parts at the wrong price or something. But yeah, there's no secret. My math skills are pretty terrible.
And I mean, speaking of what kind of person you are, because I think that perfectly showed the person you are. I kind of want to go back to the fact that you are so English. Even though you lived in so many countries and you went through so many cultures, you are so typically English. And I think that's honestly something I love about our dynamic because you are so almost stereotypically English and I'm so Slavic. And, I'm not really proud of my nationality and I never really connected it with it. But lately, I really do notice how Slavic I am. And I think it's a perfect combination. And sometimes we can be quite stereotypical, both of us. But at the same time, I just find it funny.
I've always described myself as an internationalist, but who has been born English. And I know I am very English and I'm proud to be English. And I'm lucky to be English in a way because I don't have to learn other languages. That's so lazy.
Yes,
English people are so lazy with languages.
definitely. But at the same time, every time you mention that, it makes me feel better because I'm more educated in that area than you are. And I love making fun of you for that in
So
a
moving along
totally,
swiftly,
totally friendship way. But every time we sort of argue, or every time you are being annoying and you are nitpicking at something I've done, I always tell you that once you will be able to argue with me in either Czech or French, then we will argue. And until then, I'm the one who's right.
actually, we've never actually had an argument, but we do hurl
No.
insults at each other a lot. When the microphone is off,
Yeah, when the mic's off, it's even worse. And I genuinely don't think that we should bring that up into the podcast because then people are saying that we don't like each other. And this is something that I've told you before we started recording this morning. And it's connected to both me being Slavic and our dynamic that every time you speak, I look so bored and so annoyed with you. And I noticed it yesterday when we were recording episode 2 and I was like, "Oh my gosh, when I'm listening, I look like I hate just being there," which I kinda want to point out it's not, and I'm genuinely enjoying it, and I'm genuinely listening to you, because if I didn't, we probably wouldn't be here. But it's just my face. It's just my passive expression, and yeah, but it sort of connects to the fact that sometimes I think that we literally might seem like we don't like each other at all, and we are sort of forced to share the same space, which is not true. But yeah, that's just who we are.
in other ways, we sometimes feel like the same person. And we have this joke that we share the same brain cell, and whoever's coming up with the ideas at any given moment is the one who's actually in possession of the brain cell at that particular time. But there is one key difference between us, and that
Only
is
one
that,
of them.
well, one key one, there might be others, that I am the eternal optimist. My glass is always half full, whereas Michelle is more of a pessimist, although you would say that you're a realist.
You keep calling me a pessimist. I think I'm just a realist. And mind you, I hate your optimism sometimes. Sometimes I just want to complain, and you keep finding those light spots and like those optimistic things. And I'm just she's just shut up. But I'm not quite sure because I seem like a pessimist. But to be honest, I'm always trying to see everything from both sides and coming up with, something in the middle. Because on one side, I do tend to lean towards the negative way. But on the other hand, I'm very, very good in something that we call picking curtains. And I need you to explain that because this saying is just genius. You came up with it years ago. And since that, I'm using it and I will probably be using it a lot. So I need you to explain it here.
Okay, I have to go back to, gosh, I think I probably came up with this over 25 years ago now. Picking out the curtains. You know what it is? You moving into a new house and you're already imagining putting your stamp on it, and you are, in your mind, you're picking out the curtains. That's the ultimate of making a place your home, having your own curtains, the curtains you chose. So I started using this. Actually, it goes back to the days when I was still playing in bands and writing the songs. And I was using this expression in a song to talk about a new relationship. And the idea was picking out the curtains is basically getting ahead of yourself, starting to think this is going to happen when the things that need to happen for the ultimate thing to happen haven't happened yet. That's a lot of
Yes.
happens.
Which obviously perfectly connects to the name of our podcast. And also thinking about it now to your life, because your life was really happening, is still happening a lot.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? With like different
Yeah.
things going on for you than for
Not
normal
dead
people
yet.
usually. And so that itself explains it a lot, but maybe we should explain it a bit more. Do you want to explain why we decided, going back to different names that we were thinking about for this podcast, why we decided to go with this one?
Well, I'll try, but like most things we do, it's kind of six of one and half a dozen of the other being you. Uh, I originally, the name came to me. I was watching something on TV and somebody used that expression in the way that it has become a bit of an idiom in the English language, like I was doing something, and then life happens. And I was going, yes, that's it. Life happens. It gets in the way. But at the same time, you can get past that. So I told it to you. You took that away. You liked it, but then you came up with your own little twist on it.
Yes, because exactly as you said it, it's sort of when you just say life happens, it sounds like an excuse. Like, okay, it doesn't matter what I'm doing in my life because then life happens anyway and it will change it for me. So why should I even try? And I didn't like that because that's the exact opposite of what we are doing and what we believe in. So I added that little asterisk that we use now, and that's even in the logo, which basically means that yes, life happens, but you can do something about it. There's always but. Life happens, but you can change it, you can fix it, you can start again. And out of all these strap lines that we were thinking about, we ended up with but you can too. Because life is happening. Sometimes you can't really predict it. Sometimes you can't really change it because that's not how it works and life can be unfair. But you can be happening too and you can always do something about it. And I think that that perfectly describes everything we will be ever talking about.
Okay, we're just going to talk about all the different things that happen to us and might be happening to you. And we'd love to hear from you to tell us the things that are happening to you, the life happens moments that you have experienced. Because all of these things happen. Life can be incredibly irritating, incredibly bureaucratic, frustrating, all of these things. But at the base of it all, there's still you. Your life is important. It's important to, in my view, have a good time in life, and to be progressive, to do things that you want to do. Don't give up on your dream. You might not achieve your dream. We talked about this in the first episode, but by having one, you'll get closer to it. It'll give you something to shoot for. So life happens, but you can too.
So please get in touch with us. You can write us a message on our Instagram at lifehappens.podcast. Also, don't forget to follow us on Spotify or wherever you are listening to this podcast. And we will be here with the next episode very soon.
And that, everyone, is who the fuck we are.